And good morning, everybody. It is Wonderful Wednesday with Adam Cox. Adam, I met you at HypnoThoughts Live. I think it was 2021 at the Orleans.
It was the last year of the Orleans, wasn't it?
Yeah. And you're English, all right? And I had to meet you in America, of course, like so many of my peers. However, you are a leading magnet in the podcasting world. We know that. And you also have this most wonderful voice. So please, Adam, tell us about you, how you got into hypnosis and what you like about HypnoThoughts Live.
Yes, there's several parts to that. About me, so part of the reason why I got into hypnosis was severe anxiety as a teenager. I became a recluse at the age of 19. I only left my apartment to get food at a 24-hour supermarket. I was suicidal. And the irony was that I was doing a psychology degree. And the one benefit that degree had for me, it wasn't the classes, because I wasn't attending any classes. There was a 24-hour library. So for me, with really, really severe social anxiety, I could go to the library with the objective of fixing myself. So I looked at all the different kind of therapeutic modalities, and what worked for me is a combination of hypnosis and NLP. So I always tell my clients that I was my first client because I wanted to fix myself.
Wow.
And I was really, I don't know where it came from, but there was this element that I kind of knew that if I went to a doctor and described what I was going through, would have been put on antidepressants or SRIs, beta blockers. And I didn't want to be medicated because I knew that at some level I was causing this. It was what I was believing, what I was focusing on. And that was my first kind of journey into it. I had a little taste of it before because I read a book by Ormond McGill when I was about 12 or 13 years old. So I was doing, the kind of magnetic fingers and hands being kind of locked together and all this kind of stuff. And that was just information. And in England, around my teens, Paul McKenna was very, very popular on TV, had a primetime TV show about stage hypnosis. So I was fascinated and interested, but therapeutically, I only got into it as an attempt to fix myself. That was the goal. I did nothing with it for many, many years apart from being interested, but I created a PR agency when I was 23 years old. I still have that PR agency now. It was in my mid-30s when I discovered something called Ikigai, this Japanese concept of kind of purpose and being. If you've got an Ikigai book there, amazing. And of the 4 circles of the Venn diagram in my PR agency, I was good at it. I was getting paid for it. The world needed it, but I wasn't passionate about it. And I asked myself the question, what is it that I naturally think about, even if there's no money involved? It's just out of pure joy or curiosity. And it was psychology. It was hypnosis. So the very next day I signed up for a hypnosis course, and they said the rest is history. But it was kind of like, because I had a background in business, me getting hypnotherapeutic qualifications meant that I could get the clients, I could kind of raise my profile. Second part of your question was about HypnoThoughts, and I think I applied to HypnoThoughts the year before Old Orleans, and I'd missed the deadline, and Scott was like, "You've missed it, but look, apply next year." And I was very grateful to be given an opportunity to do my first talk at the Old Orleans was about movie metaphors, and I take a lot of inspiration from movies. In fact, Nested Loops, that we're going to be talking about in a bit, actually the inspiration for that came from the movie Inception. And I met you, and I met lots of other people there at HypnoThoughts, and I was just struck by how friendly it is. I had this idea that there would be a lot of kind of egos and a lot of pretentiousness, and I was pleasantly surprised that there wasn't that. Everyone was so approachable. Everyone was kind of very keen to kind of introduce me to different kind of people. And I think the word community gets thrown around a lot, but I think for HypnoThoughts in particular, it does feel like there's a genuine sense of community. And I think Scott, Stephanie have done a lot of whatever the magic formula they put into that to create and cultivate that kind of feeling. So I think it's absolutely my favorite. I hope any other organizers aren't listening to this, but it's my favorite conference, I think, just because it's big, but it doesn't lose the community feel given how many people are there.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's it is so much fun. So anybody, if you are sitting on the fence about whether to go to HypnoThoughts Live, just go and then experience it for yourself, really and truly. That was not planned, was it? We were not talking about that before. I literally had that because I do discuss that with a lot of people about being in your ikigai. So it's, I agree. I think it's fantastic. And I can personally say I am in my ikigai, and I believe you are too, Adam. So, and I would think most hypnotists are, hypnotherapists are. So it's great. Now, Adam, you have a post-conference workshop. I do too. Yours is on the Monday. It's July the 20th. Adam, tell us about what you're doing and the benefits of someone taking your workshop.
Yeah, so I mentioned it before, the movie Inception. I have a podcast called The Hypnotist, and what really helped it to grow was me being creative with the hypnosis sessions, and I was taking inspiration from movies. And when I tried to turn the structure of the movie Inception into a hypnosis session, I was struck by how closely it mapped across to the structure of nested loops, this idea of stories within stories. And there's two things that I'm going to be doing at HypnoThoughts. I'm going to be doing a 1-hour talk, actually during the conference, called Nested Loops Made Easy, what I call the Inception Induction. But the post-conference workshop isn't the theory and the what it is. It's the how. It's actually kind of learning the skills. Because one of the things that I think is really, really important is if you just accumulate more and more knowledge with the intention of applying that knowledge when you're with a client, you've still got more work to do to turn knowledge into competency. And the purpose of this 1 day workshop, which is mastery in nested loops, is to get beyond the kind of the theory element and do lots of practical elements. So my intention is that anyone leaving that day has got to the stage of, if not mastery, then at least conscious competency, and with practice that will turn into unconscious competency. Because I think when you've got the skill and it's there, then your intuition will use that when it's relevant. Now, the obvious question is, what is nested loops? Nested loops is a story within a story within a story. Each story has an open loop, and the idea is that by going into this, you have increased engagement from the client. You can give them a more interesting experience. The actual levels of disassociation keep them kind of captivated. And there's this idea that the more levels you go down, or the more stories of within stories, the deeper the experience is for the client. And I've done thousands of nested loops sessions. I think that's true. My version of nested loops is different in two regards. Rather than the linguistic element of story 1, open a loop, story 2, open a loop, story 3, I think of it in terms of levels of disassociation. And by doing that, the bridge between each level of disassociation becomes a way that I can remember where I am in the actual kind of stories, so that I can elegantly navigate them back at the end of the session. And it's versatile enough that you can incorporate other techniques or protocols within the levels of disassociation. But if you're just memorizing stories within stories, that might not be relevant to the client that you're working with. And also it has the problem of, how do you then integrate inner child work or parts therapy, or a really good metaphor that the client has alluded to in the pre-talk? How do you do that if you've mentally rehearsed your linguistic version of nested loops? So my version means that it's very versatile, it's very personalized to the client that I'm working with. And for me, one of the main benefits of doing it that way is that it becomes more fun and more creative. And because the side effect of, I'd say about 80-90% of my client sessions end up on my podcast, completely protecting the confidentiality of the client, even if I've got a similar client with a similar situation, because the hypnosis session that they experience might have these different levels of disassociation, it means that I'm more engaged because it doesn't feel like I'm on autopilot. The client gets something unique for them, and perhaps an audience of my podcast, they get to hear something entirely different, even though structurally it's dealing with a similar issue. So who the workshop is for is probably for the kind of therapist that like storytelling and metaphor and the creative side. I don't think it's ideal for those people that like rigid techniques, although you can use those techniques within this model. I think for those people that are more Ericksonian, they like the power of metaphors, they like weaving stories together, it's great for them. But they might feel that, how do they get from where the level they are now to being able to elegantly weave these kind of multi-layered and multi-textured stories together? That's who's going to benefit most, because it's actually going to be learning that very skill in that day.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. I really do. So it's interesting. So anybody watching this, you'll notice that a lot of comedians use nested loops. The first version that you were talking about, where it's a story within the story, because it's structured and they know where they're going to be going because they've practiced it, they've rehearsed it.
Mm.
And what so tell me if I'm wrong. What you're saying, Adam, is that you've got your client, they'll say something and they'll actually say what it's like for them. They'll bring in a metaphor. And then you've taken note of that. I mean, I often do this. I'll just make little, I've got, just one note. So I understand my notes. Nobody else does, but I've got these notes. And then and then you can, and they'll say something else. And then as you're talking to them or whatever you're doing, even with the hypnosis, you can bring back in and what they said to it, so that it's very personalized and it's meaningful for them. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, the way I structure it, and I was on Astrid's podcast a couple of days ago. She came up with a great metaphor to help explain it, that most storytelling is like a corridor where you open a door, you tell that story, and then you go back into the corridor, walk along, and then open a new door, and then you've got a new topic or theme. How I think of nested loops is that in the corridor, you go through one door, you're in a room, and in that room, there's another door that leads to a different place. And in that place, there's another door that leads to a different place. And to get back to the corridor, you go back in reverse order. And a lot of people, a lot of comedians, I would say, do that linear way. They've got a bit, 5 minutes on a topic, they kind of close it off and they go back. What some people consider more like a nested loop is what they call a callback. And the callback is that they've alluded to something earlier on in the sketch. And then when they refer back to it, it kind of feels like, oh, wow, that's clever, because they opened a loop earlier on in their performance, and then they close that loop or they evolve that loop later on. So that would be a callback. So it does have some structural overlap. And you see that sometimes in movies. You also see it in conversations. Like, some people will have a conversation where they have one topic and then it naturally evolves into something else. But you do get some people where they can't finish a story and they go on a tangent and they digress into a different area. And you're left wondering, what's the end of that first story? And I would say there are some people that naturally do nested loops, or they've done it so many times that it's just the way that they now talk. And I think, for me, Richard Bandler is the best example of someone that definitely hasn't scripted these things. He's just told these stories so many times that an idea will pop in his head. He goes down the rabbit hole, tells that story, and sometimes never even gets back to the original kind of story. It's just digression after digression. But it can be confusing. It can be engaging. It can be hypnotic when you listen to someone like that, because it does feel like you have to know where you are, so you can't lose attention. And I think some clients, they're very analytical and they're in their own head, and some of them need a bit more cognitive work to do. And I think nested loops helps them to kind of stay invested, because if it's just, and you relax and you're feeling sleepy, and then you just hit them with suggestions, that's very kind of basic. But if you've taken them on a journey of maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 levels of disassociation, and they're in a world within a world within a world within a world, that feels very, very far away from the reality where they are. They don't feel, and there is that phrase in hypnosis, and now you're back in the room. And I think that's because disassociation, while they're in that experience, takes them out of the room that they're in, takes them somewhere else. And elegant nested loops takes them not just to one place else, but a place within a place within a place within a place, and gets them back in the room at the end of that session.
Lovely.
And that's what it feels like nested loops are to me.
Yeah, no, great. I love it. Love it. Well, so anybody who is watching this and you want to learn how to do this and get, as you said, they're not going to necessarily be a master of it, because it takes practice, right? But they will have some form of competency, and the more they practice it, then the better they get.
Yeah, I'd want it so that they can leave feeling that in the very next hypnosis session that they've got optionality, that they could do this kind of structure in the very next session, and it would be fine, and they can get them back. And it's a combination of levels of disassociations and something called mnemonics, which is memory tools, it's memory techniques. And if you think of Narnia, for example, if you ask the average person that's seen The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, like, how do they get from their childhood home into Narnia? Anyone that's heard that story once will say, okay, they go through the wardrobe. The wardrobe is how they get into that place. And it could be decades since they've seen that animated version or the live action remake or the story, and they still know it's the wardrobe that gets them from the home to Narnia. That's a mnemonic. So that's one of the techniques that we're actually going to be covering, so that people can have these devices, so that if you have got multiple levels of disassociation, you don't forget where you are, and you know how to get back in reverse order, closing all the loops and still giving an elegant, powerful hypnosis experience. Because clients aren't paying to be told a story. They're told that they're there because they want some kind of change and that kind of stuff. What this does is it gives a structure to still do the work, but within this kind of elegant storytelling structure.
And the client is the story.
It's their past, it's their future outcome. You get to play with time, you get to play with environmental context. If you're going to regress them to any place, why not regress them to a place that they can either give a different meaning to the past or access a resource state? And all of this can happen within levels of disassociation.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, good. It sounds, I know, it does. It sounds brilliant. So I have a workshop on the Tuesday and Wednesday, which is the 21st and 22nd. And I'm training the bunny talk process. And what is that? Well, again, it's an anchoring technique, NLP, a lot of NLP in the bunny talk process. And it is for children. There's a lot of play in it, and you are on the floor. So it's for teens who we're working obviously sometimes with their child, but it's like they sometimes are very negative and they don't want to be there. So it's like there's a little bit of a shock thing there, because with my teenagers, I do this. I treat them as an adult, the emotional intelligence diagrams. So I do a lot of that. And they're like, again, it can be quite hypnotic. And you're building that rapport, which is really important with all of our clients. Again, then they actually, okay, now we're doing this, because you've had that first bit of rapport building. The beauty is that I always like to see my adults first, the parents first of a child. And that's the great benefit of this, because sometimes once the parents are on board, and I do it in a very clever way, that they take the responsibility of actually the environment that they create for their child. And they go, oh, it's us. So they get that light bulb moment, and then they actually want to work with you. Sometimes you never need to see the child, because they realize it's not the child that needs fixing. It's actually them and the environment that they're creating. And then, you know, you can go on. I mean, I see whole families, and it's lovely. It's lovely work. It's very playful, and it's moving. You know, there's a lot of you have to you know, be able to get on the floor. Yes, you can use it online. I always prefer it in person. I mean, literally, I've got a what have I got something here? Oh, I had something. I must put it away. But it's a you know, it's big pieces of paper. People literally have grown-ups then, because you're working with their inner child, and it's they just go, oh my gosh, because it's the dissociation, Adam. They're getting it out on the paper, and they're kinesthetically feeling it, and then they're drawing it out, and it's very powerful. Transformation happens really quickly, and when I'm training it, the people are getting their own transformation, but also because they're working with other people, they are transforming with other people there and then in real time, and they go, I just did that for somebody else, and it wasn't me, they did it. And that is like so exciting, because, you know, they've then felt it. And as I say, this is been done multiple times now for people, and some really big cases where, again, people have sadly felt suicidal, and have been in therapy for years and years and years. And the bunny talk process, the step-by-step framework, was able to do that for them, get them to a place of indifference. Like, so what? That awful thing happened. So what? Because it was at a cellular place, and now it's gone. So yeah. So I'm doing that for 2 days. So join me.
Well, it sounds like there's a winning strategy here. So if people are still watching the video at this point, the goal is do HypnoThoughts for 3 days, do my nested loops mastery for 1 day, and then do 2 days of learning the bunny talk process. And then 6 days is going to change your life.
There you go. Well, and why not? Because actually I do use a lot of the nested loops in it. Probably not as effectively as you do. You know, you seem to be a master of it, but I think I naturally do it anyway, simply because I have, as you probably noticed, slight ADHD. So I'm on that. So I'm constantly hopping from one story to another, which is why the bunny talk process is so good, because it's so playful, and it's like, and it's just that kind of the way it works, because it's like, oh, we're doing this now, oh, we're doing this, and the pattern interrupts that occur are just like constantly like this, and somebody cannot get back because of it's like the wiring is completely gone haywire, if you like, that, and it's not the same. So, and we start to play a new movie through their head instead of that old one, because it's been completely obliterated. So, but yeah, and it's all through play, because what's better than play?
That's it. If it's fun, then things stick, I think, better if it's enjoyable. And
I agree. Got to have fun, and you will. Anybody who's watching this, join us at HypnoThoughts Live, because you will have fun anyway. So thank you for coming on here, Adam. I appreciate you chatting to us. As I say, you've got that lovely silky voice, which I'm sure everybody's just been going, so thank you, and it's goodbye from me, Claudia Ricard, and it's goodbye from Adam.
It's goodbye from me, Adam Cox.
So take care, everybody. Thanks for watching.